Welcome to Tuesday Talks. Are you tired of all the BS and fluff in self-help and personal development? We're here to deliver evidence-based growth. So buckle up. We're going to give you the actionable, evidence-based answers you need, all in under 10 minutes, here on Tuesday Talks.
Hey guys, welcome to Tuesday Talks.
Tuesday Talks is a new segment. For a few minutes every week, we dive in and we dissect a certain topic or theme that we see repeated over and over and over throughout the guests in our show. This week, we're going to talk a little bit about emotions. Emotions come up a lot in various guests and the different levels of emotions, the different types of emotions.
Indeed. So to start out, Austin, what do emotions mean to you, or what have you learned about emotions from being the producer and sitting in on so many interviews?
Sure. So one of the things I think that keeps on coming up over and over and over that I've really taken to heart is that you can't fight negative emotions and win. A lot of times the best way to go through negative emotions is to recognize them, see them for what they are. Okay, as Justin Stenstrom says, you almost talk to this emotion. You kind of welcome it back into your life, like fear, like my old friend, like welcome back sweaty palms. And in that way, you're identifying it for what it is. It's not usually what you're actually afraid of. It's just fear itself. And by identifying it that way, you can sort of disarm it really and take away its power over you, and then recognize what it is, experience it for a short moment, and then move on or use it in a positive way to help you kind of prepare more thoroughly or to perform at a higher level.
And I think that's been a recurrent theme from many guests on the show. And I mean, it harkens back to something we were talking about before we started recording, the old Buddhist phrase, hello Mara, right? It's
Sure.
The idea of welcoming that fear, those negative emotions in and accepting them for what they are. But I think that acceptance is a huge piece of dealing with negative emotions, but I think there's also another component of it, which is the idea that negative emotions are often a signpost or a guidepost, or they're giving you information that you can use and that you can internalize to learn about or improve something that is going on in your life. Fear, anger, whatever the emotion is, they're different signals telling you sort of different things that you need to be paying attention to.
I love that. And one of my favorite phrases, and it was Kamala who first kind of brought this up, is it's like everything you want's on the other side of fear. Like the magic is always on the other side of fear. And using fear as your compass is always kind of a nice guiding principle. Because if you're afraid of something, more often than not, and correct me if I'm wrong in your life, it's usually what you should be doing. Right?
Absolutely. I mean, even literally yesterday, I had a number of emails that I had to send. You probably know what I'm talking about. And I've been avoiding sending them for a while because it's kind of scary to send them, right?
Right.
And you don't want to get rejected, you don't want to put yourself out there and all this stuff, and eventually you kind of just have to cross the bridge and be like, look, this needs to happen.
So then a follow-up question there is, how do you feel once you've sent the emails?
You always feel a lot better, right?
Right.
And that looming sense of whatever goes away, and you realize that all the stuff that you've kind of been afraid of doesn't really matter, and it's never going to happen anyway, and you kind of just push through it.
And on the opposite side is if what you were originally wanting to happen ends up happening, that emotion almost gets reversed from fear to just like absolute jubilation and happiness.
Totally true.
Another thing I think is interesting is, and it sort of ties into perfectionism a little bit, is people are afraid to experience certain emotions because they hold themselves to such high standards. I mean, Tal Ben-Shahar talks about it a lot.
Emotional perfectionism.
Right. So it's kind of this thought that if I'm not always happy, you hear this a lot today, even with, with like obviously positive psychology, and even in the entrepreneurial world, a lot, people are kind of like, no matter what, see the bright side, like always be positive, always keep going. And really that's setting a standard for yourself that's almost impossible throughout, at least for a long period of time.
And that's sort of a tension or a balance that I think a lot about, which is how do you balance that idea that on the one hand you should focus on positive things and you should try to be in a peak state as much as possible, sort of the Tony Robbins, John Vroman-esque approach, versus the idea of accepting negative emotions, really going inside, trying to feel them out, trying to understand what's going on, and where to land on that sort of seesaw between those two things is something to me that I spend a lot of time thinking about. And I don't know necessarily the right answer of how to thread that needle, but it's a topic that we've explored in many episodes, and I think we'll continue to explore
Absolutely.
as the show progresses.
One thing also I think is interesting is sort of tactics and actions you can take to maximize positive emotion and minimize negative emotion without sort of blocking either of them out. So John Wang, for instance, the power of kindness and gratitude.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you want to experience more positive emotion, you need to bring more positive emotion into your life and your actions as well. I mean, by committing that one act of kindness per day, I mean, it came down to being more attracted to the opposite sex, the health benefits of it. But if you're giving good in the world, you're more likely to receive more good in the world, right? So
Absolutely,
there's
yeah. I mean,
tactics.
And there's a ton of research behind random acts of kindness and lots of different ways that you can kind of stimulate the positive neurobiological effects of of positive emotions. And to me, that's another something that I try to integrate into my everyday. Actually, after listening to the John Wayne episode, I still sort of try to perform, even if it's like holding a door open for somebody or the smallest little thing. I try to do at least one simple act of kindness every day to try and kind of put myself into, trigger some of those positive neurochemicals, but also kind of put myself in a more positive state.
Sure. And where does meditation and like mindset play into that?
Well, I think those are both of those are like big buckets, right?
Right.
But to me, the at least personally, the biggest thing I'm taking away from meditation is the fundamental ability to dig in and understand what's going on right now. Because
Right.
if you listen to many of the guests on the show, they share the same first step, and that's always acknowledging and accepting what's happening and understanding what's happening. And once you have that, it's a lot easier to progress into what are the next steps? How do I break down these limiting beliefs? How do I deal with these negative emotions? How do I process them? How do I understand where they're coming from? All of those things. But if you don't have the self-awareness to see what's going on inside of your mind and inside of your body, then you're never going to be able to take the steps necessary to deal with whatever challenging emotions or problems that you're experiencing.
Sure. It's almost kind of like a diagnosis of a doctor. I mean, you have to know what is
Exactly.
wrong before you can begin to treat it. The symptoms really aren't just enough. You can't say, I'm coughing, I have a fever, I have a headache. It could be a million different things. Kind of like you can't say just like, oh, I'm angry. That's it. I mean, you kind of have to pinpoint exactly what is angry, what was your role in what's making you angry. Are you internalizing it? Are you pushing it out in the world? And how can you sort of move past that and keep going?
Totally true. And the other sort of component of this that ties into emotions in many ways is something we haven't aired this interview yet. We have an upcoming interview with Gay Hendricks of The Big Leap, and
Sure.
I don't know if you've read that or not, but it's a really, really good book about self-sabotage and how negative emotions often creep up and kind of manifest themselves when we feel like we've been too successful or we're too happy, or we have almost, as he puts it, sort of like a thermostat that sets our happiness and in different buckets too. So financial happiness, financial abundance in your love life, abundance in your sort of creativity and play in your life. And so we have these set points that are set in childhood oftentimes for what's acceptable. Like, I can only be so happy. And if for whatever reason we exceed one or the other, oftentimes subconsciously we will self-sabotage with negative emotions, or by picking fights with people, or by getting angry or getting upset about something kind of inane, to reset our happiness back to what we feel like we deserve to feel like.
So then how do you sort of combat that? Like, if I think in my life, I've got a great relationship going on right now, it's a little bit too good for me, and I start to self-sabotage it back, that seems to me like that shouldn't be the way I think, right? Like, I should revel in a beautiful relationship and being good, or even financial success.
We should, right? But
so
there's countless stories of people who self-sabotage exactly. I mean, there's almost this crazy pattern. It's like you see them be really successful, and then immediately the self-sabotage starts setting in. And one of the examples that he uses is lottery winners. Like, I think it's something like 60% of lottery winners end up losing all their money within like a 2 to 5 year period. And it's because they can't adjust to the set point of accepting that financial abundance. And so we are constantly creating and manifesting all these things in our life that seem in many cases to sort of appear out of nowhere, but really we've kind of seeded and planted and caused them to happen because we can't accept that we should be this happy or this successful.
And at the root of that is emotion.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just feeling too much of a good thing causes you to kind of want to reset yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And the way to combat it is goes back to what we were talking about before. You have to have the awareness of it, right? You have to be able to understand that it's there. And he has a really good analogy too, where he talks about the idea of it's like if you have a room that the lights have never been turned on, right? And that's a lot of your mind is a lot like a room where the lights have never been turned on. If you turn the light on, a lot of times that's 80% of the battle of cleaning up the clutter in that room, right?
Absolutely.
And trying to clean the clutter up when you don't know where the room is and you haven't turned the light on is impossible. But once you turn the light on, it's really easy to say, oh, okay, this goes over here, this goes over here, this doesn't need to be here. And, suddenly you've helped undo some limiting beliefs that have been with you for a long time.
So the theme we sort of see over and over and over is identify these emotions, figure out where they're coming from, what they are, and don't push them away, sort of embrace them and work with them, and then ultimately put out more of what you want to receive back in.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about starting with understanding, starting with acceptance, starting with where are you, where are these emotions coming from, not running from them, embracing them, feeling them, and ultimately crafting the emotional reality that you want for yourself.
I think that's a great way to end.
Let's end it on that.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Tuesday Talks. For more great content like this and things focused on evidence-based growth, be sure to sign up for our email list. You can sign up right here or by going to successpodcast.com.